Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Tim Gordon. This week, thousands of Oregonians made their voices heard in the primary election, setting the stage for November. And it's looking like it'll be a rematch in the governor's race between Democrat Tina Kotek, the incumbent, and Republican challenger Christine Drazan. The Associated Press and Oregonian both calling it for Drazan, with 41% of the votes as of the time that we're taping this program on Thursday morning. State Representative Ed Deal and former Portland Trailblazer Chris Dudley are trailing behind. We were at Drazan election night headquarters in Aurora Tuesday night. As those results came in, here's what the state senator said in her victory speech.
I'm in this fight with you and for you. We are going to get this done together. None of this can happen alone. Every single bit of this will take every single person in this room making the decision to do more than they have ever done before to fight for the future of our state. We know how tough this road is going to be. Because what is our goal? Fire Tina Kotek.
Meanwhile, Governor Kotek cruised to victory with an overwhelming majority of votes. This was her message on social media.
Thank you for making your voices heard and for electing me as your Democratic nominee for governor. I'm really grateful for your support. Together, we show what Oregon looks like when we lead with our values and deliver real results for Oregon families. And this November, every bit of that is on the ballot, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
Well, from that high-stakes rematch for governor to voter frustration over transportation funding, turnout, and the direction of the state, plus some of the key congressional races that could reshape Oregon politics come November, there's a lot to break down post-election. And here to help us do that, Rebecca Tweed, a veteran political strategist and the president of Tweed Strategies with more than 2 decades of experience in Oregon politics. She's advised more than 120 campaigns and policy efforts across the Pacific Northwest, from local races to statewide campaigns. Also with us, Julia Shumway, editor-in-chief of the Oregon Capitol Chronicle. She's an award-winning journalist who has covered state government and politics across the Pacific Northwest and serves as president of Oregon's Capitol Press Corps. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have
Great
you
to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And we want to be clear, we're taping this Thursday morning, the 21st, 2 days post-election day now, and so that is a factor. Most races, a lot of races, are finished, but there are some that are not complete yet. So we will be going on that route. But let's talk first about the Republican result in the primary for governor.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. My take, not surprised it was Drazan. Ed Deal made a name for himself and did pretty well. Chris Dudley did worse than I expected. Mm-hmm. Rebecca, you're the resident Republican insider here, and you personally supported Dudley, we can say.
Sure, we can. Yeah, I've known Chris Dudley for 20 years since he ran before. He's a good friend of mine. I also think he had really the best platform and really the best perspective to beat Governor Kotek in November. And winnability is not something that Republicans have really put in their blood for 40 years running for office. That said, I think Senator Drazan, I will champion for her, and I think she'll put up quite a fight. It just actually reflects more about voters than the candidates themselves. But yeah, it was interesting to see the way that breakdown went between those top vote getters for certain.
Do you think the electorate has changed that much since he ran, almost beat Kitzhaber, back when? Now it's several years later, right?
Right.
That was 2010.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the Republican electorate has certainly changed what you see in primaries. We went through a stretch where you had Republican voters in Oregon choosing more moderate candidates, people like Chris Dudley, Newt Buehler in 2018. And Senator Drazan, who was the nominee the last 2 cycles, is definitely probably not far right by the standards of other states, but more to the right than what we've seen in Oregon. And she'll have to see if she can do a different job of moderating herself or appealing to those independent voters in the general.
Think she was a safe bet for Republicans then?
Safe is a safe word. I think she was a stable, trustworthy vote. I think Senator Drazan represents a Republican Party that did exist 20 years ago when Republicans were in a majority. She showed that she can go toe-to-toe even though she's lost before. But taking on a run for governor and taking on a battle is no small feat. She represents a traditional, trustworthy establishment Republican. And at a governor's level, at that seat of power, establishment and stability is really pretty critical. We don't see that in the down ballot races. But for governor, I think we're seeing traditional establishment Democrat, traditional establishment Republican, I don't know that Oregon voters are traditional establishment, either of those anymore.
Right.
But we'll see.
We get a lot of independents,
Yes,
more and
yes.
more in this state for sure. So let's talk about Tina Kotek, the Democratic Party obviously supporting her for her reelection bid. But is she at all at risk in this general coming up?
I don't think she's at risk for probably winning the most amount of votes. She probably will be the vote getter, and I know that's tough to say, but it's a tough state to try to change people's actual affiliation and their perspectives. However, she has a lot to answer for. She has a lot to be accountable for in this state. And Oregonians, more than ever, I think, are very engaged. They want accountability and transparency. She ran the first time as a new candidate, saying, I'm going to do all these things, and 4 years in, what's the report card, right?
Yep.
And Senator Drazen has an advantage to say, you were promised this, I said I'd do it, you didn't pick me, someone said they would do it and they haven't done it yet. That's a different conversation. And the tax measures and those things around the state reflect voter behavior towards accountability right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Kotek has a record now, and Drazen's very good at attacking Kotek now. She can use that as well. But yeah, it's been a long time since the 80s. Vicatilla, the last Republican governor. Do you think there's any chance?
I think it's probably unlikely that we will see a Senator Drazen being sworn in as governor next year. But I do think that she, as Rebecca said, she has her attack lines laid out for her. She's not running against an unknown quantity. Democrats are going to try really hard to make this election a referendum on President Trump. They've already announced a statewide tour. Trump is on the ballot, targeting her. But Senator Drazen will be trying her best to make this referendum on Governor Kotek in the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see these campaigns as they go forward now towards November.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other big deal in this election was obviously the huge win for Republicans with the major defeat of the referendum on funding ODOT for highway maintenance. More than 80% of voters said no way. You see, it's 83.1% as of Thursday morning. The 6 cent per gallon gas tax and increased fees, not popular. It appears with voters across the political spectrum there. I don't think many people thought this would pass, but man, what a wallop. I mean, were you surprised by this 83%?
I was maybe a little surprised by the extent of that. I think the big question that we had going into this was just how badly would it lose? I'm sure the Iran war and what we've seen at gas prices over the last month did not help.
Yeah, that's for sure. I was wondering about that. I mean, I wondered how many percentage points that added to the vote total. But I mean, 83%.
That margin's huge. It's bigger than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, the signatures this campaign was able to gather is the largest I've ever seen it. And I've worked on dozens of measures in this state, and I've never seen anything like it. A turnout with that wide of margin sends a really big message, particularly in Oregon, where we're seen as this very partisan state, and we are. It's going to take a while to break some of that down, but then you take an issue like that isn't just about taxes, it's not just about the Iran war, but all of those become a quality of life issue. And to have that many people, it's no longer just Ed Deal's position or the Republican position. 83% of voters, that has to include Portland, Lane, some of the more progressive areas, those voters said no too.
Yeah.
And that really sends a message for what we expect out of leaders. Definitely sends don't put a tax measure back on the ballot for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
More so, what are voters telling you about what they want in their life?
Yeah.
They don't want hardship. Which governor is going to provide us the pathway out of hardship? That's what I think is going to be the best narrative message over the next few months.
Yep, that's for sure. Rebecca, though, this is more than about just bad timing. I'm sure you think that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to hear from the governor now. Governor Kotek's spokesperson at least addressed this issue on Wednesday, writing in part, the governor is focused on working with lawmakers of both parties, ODOT leadership, stakeholders, and local leaders to find a path forward. This is a question I really wanted to ask you. What are you hearing from your sources about where this goes from here?
The legislature has been very keen, at least as they were starting to head into their primary elections, to let the governor's task force take it on from here. When they tried in 2025, the governor had largely stayed out of pre-session talks. The legislature came forward with a massive tax bill. The $4.3 billion that voters just rejected is much smaller than what they were proposing and couldn't pass in 25. And after the governor came in and took over, I think they are willing to let her take the lead on this very unpopular issue for now.
Yeah, she's gonna be more involved for sure. And Republicans are gonna use this going towards November, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Certainly to talk about what this means for local races, for the incumbents that voted against this and advocated for it, and also to really weigh into where local races and local municipalities and decision making comes into play. That really is something that I think Oregonians are more focused on. But that tax measure crushed every other bond measure on the ballot. And I'll say without science, but just from a strategic perspective, 60 to 70% of the measures locally that were on the ballot probably would have passed if it had not been for the statewide gas measure. And so that calculation from an overall revenue standpoint, not just a political one, should have been had before they put this measure on the ballot. And there will be local communities that were very upset that their legislature didn't consider their couple $100s a year for their fire station didn't go because they couldn't figure out transportation for 3 years with billions of dollars.
Right. And Democrats kind of have to own that.
Yeah, and they're going to have to go back to those communities and local schools and unions and tell them this was a strategic mistake, I think.
Yeah. Well, this was a great discussion on that. We're going to move on now and talk about one clear winner in Oregon's primary election is Senator Jeff Merkley, who won his race on the Democratic side with more than 93% of the vote. Didn't really have much challenge there. He is now set to move on to the midterm election in November as he goes for his fourth 6-year term in the U.S. Senate. Who his opponent will be is at this time a little undecided. State Senator David Brock Smith of Curry and Coos counties is in the lead for the GOP in the Senate primary, but Jo Ray Perkins and Brent Barker are following close behind with more than 20% of the vote each. But whoever the Republican candidate is a win even harder to accomplish, do you think, in that race than the governor's race?
Oh, absolutely. Senator Merkley doesn't carry some of the same baggage that Governor Brown has. He's a little more distant from some of the problems facing Oregon. People don't often think of the U.S. Senate when they're looking at their gas station or trying to buy a house here.
Yeah. Your thoughts?
I think Senator Merkley will stay Senator Merkley, but that is a strong showing of Republican candidates. I mean, Senator David Brock Smith is not a nothing, and Jo Ray Perkins may be a perennial candidate, but she's built strength around the state to continue doing this. There's a message for voters in Oregon that I think Senator Merkley's office would be keen to listen to of there's a vote and a voice that needs to be represented better. So you'll probably get the win, but continue to listen because at some point one of those numbers is not going to be 27.2%. It's going to be 50 plus 1. Right. It's just, is that in 2 years or 4 years? And how do we handle that as a state in our leadership policy?
Is one of the challenges here that our politics are more polarized than they were back in the 80s and 90s when we did have a little bit of shift back and forth? Or do you think we can actually still get there in Oregon?
Yeah, I actually think political polarization is not as broad as it seems. I think the moderate, the thoughtful, the multi-partisan actual vote is larger than it's ever been, but we're exhausted from trying to beat that drum and not have it be successful. So the extremes on both sides, all sides are sort of popping up. And that's really what's taking the voice. I think more Oregonians actually agree than ever, but we're still trying to work ourselves out of a system where our candidates are knee-jerk reaction. It's rhetoric-based. It's what do we do for the next time to get elected? We have some candidates now who are running that don't have that for them. Senator Drazen and Governor Kotek don't have the opportunity for knee-jerk anymore. They've been leading. They have a story to tell.
Right.
But that's certainly something that we need to watch is how that affects voters going into the fall.
Yeah, but still extremely unlikely Merkley's going anywhere. But
right.
What would a winning Republican candidate have to do? How would they have to reach more Oregonians? What would their mode need to be?
I think the balance for a solid Republican or any leader in Oregon is to say, I agree with you on the ideological issues, because again, I think we mostly agree on those. And then to say, I can provide you a policy solution and plan that is long-term. I'm not reacting to anything. I'm actually listening and looking and bringing in perspectives. And, I never like the term moderate. I get it sometimes because I kind of go both ways, but I'm hardcore where I believe it's just on both sides. And so most Oregonians really believe in climate change and also don't want their taxes to go up. So how do we have energy companies and legislators talk about how we can achieve those two things together, right? Without it being who's suing who to make, headlines. So I think there's a long-term, discussion to be had, and a way that a Republican will really get this done is to be authentic and just show that a good majority of Oregonians do not want what the governor has been providing. Her unfavorabilities, which is not a word, but it is now, are so high that you have to be able to tackle some of that. Just do it without, trying to save the world. Do it the way that regular people just want to pay for their groceries. That will be the challenge.
There it is. All right, well, we're going to take a short break right now, but Rebecca and Julia will be sticking around to chat about congressional and some other local races as well. Stay with us. Well, welcome back. We're talking Oregon primary election results, getting great insight from Julia Shumway of the Oregon Capitol Chronicle, and also Rebecca Tweed, a Republican strategist. And a reminder, we're taping this show Thursday morning. That's 2 days after the primary election, so not all races are decided, but let's take a look at a couple of congressional races in the House in Oregon now. Starting with Oregon Congressional District 2 with the incumbent Republican Cliff Bentz winning his primary race easily. You see the latest numbers as of Thursday morning right there. And in November, Bentz will face a former state legislator, Chris Beck, who pulled about 35% of the Democratic vote to win against his competitors. District 2 is huge geographically, covering a big area, southern Oregon, all of eastern Oregon. And this is safe to say this is a reliably Republican district. Does Cliff Bentz have any issue here?
He has no issue. And what I love about Congressman Bentz is he will try to reach all of the Democrat voters who voted for his opponent to say, how can I represent you better? But he will hold on to that seat until probably the next Republican decides to run for that. And we're thankful for it. He brings the charm that Eastern Oregon brings and brings the voice. But he'll definitely be reaching out to make sure those voices are still heard.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Chris Beck will give it a valiant shot. Is a slightly more experienced candidate than some others who run in this district, but it is Oregon's safely Republican district.
That's interesting. Someone like Chris Beck going up and doing this. I mean, kind of almost like, what's the point? Usually you don't get somebody that high profile to run in this race. Why did he, do you think? Or?
I think it's partly that this is another Trump midterm. You've got a really galvanized Democratic Party, and they have an incentive to run people in every district across the country, even if they're not going to win. It'll also be interesting. We've seen Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries specifically call out Oregon in the past week as one of the states he hopes to see try another round of redistricting. And as these redistricting wars go on, it's hard to imagine a 6-0 Oregon map, but there may be increasing pressure on some of our legislators and Governor Kotek to make changes before 2028.
Well, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that, and I was thinking maybe Oregon was safe from all that going on.
Oh, we're definitely not. Yeah, in 2020, I worked on the measure to bring the independent commission, and COVID, kind of put down the signature gathering, but there will absolutely be redistricting conversations in Oregon very soon.
How naive I am.
No, I'm warning you.
Well, we'll be watching for that for sure. All right, well, the congressional race that's got maybe the most to wonder about is District 5, which you could call purple, right? Pretty evenly split. This is where incumbent Janelle Bynum won her Democratic primary race with about 38% of the vote. You see 82% of the vote. I've got 83% of the vote is what I meant to say. Pardon me. This is taping as live. Remember, she beat Republican incumbent Lori Chavez-Dreamer in 2024, so Bynum is a one-term incumbent. And in November, she's going to face Patty Adair on the Republican side. Adair winning with 60% of the vote. Adair's currently a Deschutes County commissioner who lives in Sisters. So what about this one going forward? Bynum doesn't have a super long record to run on. Adair doesn't have any record at this position to talk about. Congressional experience. She is a big supporter of Donald Trump. Do you see this going any way or another?
I was particularly interested in this race in part because I covered Patty Adair's first entry into politics as a Deschutes County Commissioner back in 2018 when she unseated a more moderate Republican in the Deschutes County primary, which were closed at the time. And was very surprised that she was the strongest candidate that Republicans put forward in this district, just because she doesn't have a particularly large statewide profile or much in Deschutes County. She's been a big supporter of President Trump, but she did not actually receive his endorsement in this primary. She's probably looking for that in November. And we know that NRCC had looked at other candidates in this race, potentially someone like Representative Shelley Bossert Davis from Albany. I think they've really wanted her running for Congress.
Sure.
But right now it seems that Bynum probably has the best odds moving forward. The Republicans, I think we've seen national groups, including the Cook Political Report, shifting this race from a toss-up to leans or likely Democratic.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, should the Republicans have gone harder, or what will your strategy be now with Trump and all the rest?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Patty Adair does actually make this a competitive campaign, because she does have a lock in the more conservative MAGA Republican vote, of which there are more of those voters in that district, right? So your Republicans in Tigard are not your Republicans in Prineville.
Sure. Right.
And I've known Patty for years. She advocates and does a really good job. This seat always needs to be on everybody's radar because there could be one October surprise that flips it. There could be something really unique that happens. Right now I'd say, it leans towards, Congresswoman Bynum, but she put a lot of money into this campaign for a reason. I think it will be made competitive, and we'll just see which voter or which candidate talks to voters first is what I think this is going to come down to.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that one for sure. Yeah. Well, a couple of races to point out in Washington County because I think they're interesting. One in the 15th district, the primary for a state senator on election night, and into early Wednesday, the incumbent Janine Solomon had a clear lead, but by Wednesday night, challenger Myrna Munoz had taken the lead in a now a very close race there. It's very undecided. The other for Washington County Chair, Pam Treese, had a good lead on election night, but by Wednesday night, Nafisa Faye took the lead, also very close, and this will go to a runoff. But in both cases, the arguably maybe more progressive candidate came from behind here to take the lead, and we thought that was interesting. Why is that? Is there a reason?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, voter behavior is very interesting. So your first returns are usually your highest partisan voters, the older voters, the people dying to get their ballots, right? So those first returns are the ones you usually expect. That's not where the surprises come. Your late ballots, the people like myself, actually, the vote on election day or the day before, are either you're undecided, so something really big in the last week tipped it, which is why we never take that week for granted, or they're your activist, patriotic ones. Like for me, I just really like taking my ballot in. I like sitting down and voting. I take it in. I did my election day duty. Those tend to be people that are pretty passionate about what's going to be on that ballot. And so we've seen over the years that in Oregon elections, regardless of who that is or even what the issue is, there's usually a push, a lean, or a tip towards the person that maybe represents the more ideological. That person sitting, not waiting to vote, but like waiting to vote and do their duty with it. And that's just a really different voter. And as we've seen over the years, there are more of those in Oregon than ever. And it makes kind of election night one of those like, okay, but maybe in a few days. And we've seen it. And then now with postmarks and ballots being, that we can receive for another week, those numbers will all look different a week from now. Which ones can it flip? Some of the ones you're talking about, a couple hundred of those ballots is going to make a real big difference.
A potential there, really. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd add another Washington County race to that list. In a House district, that Representative Ken Helm is vacating in Beaverton. You've got another Democratic Socialist candidate, Tammy Carpenter, who is trailing. Ashley Hartmeyer-Prague, Helm's endorsed replacement on election night, just surpassed him in the most recent round of ballots. And it is these folks who are waiting a little longer to turn their ballots in are swinging the other way. Yeah,
that's interesting. And we saw that this morning. We wanted to add it in, but thanks for bringing it into play as well. So before we go on, a situation in Wasco County that we just learned about this morning on Thursday morning, that Phil Brady, the incumbent county commissioner there, died on election day. He's running for re-election. Talk about that, Rebecca.
Yeah, he was. Well, I knew Commissioner Brady personally, of course, and what a shock. I mean, he went out for a bike ride on election day and unfortunately passed away. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with his family and his wife, Mary Jo. I have to say, it does make for an interesting situation, though. I mean, it's a runoff. He's the vote leader. I'll be interested to see what the county and Secretary of State do with how you approach it. It's not what you necessarily want to, bring up in these moments, but it'll impact the community quite a bit. But Commissioner Brady did a great job. Was a great leader, and certainly will be missed in that role.
Well, we wish our best to his family.
Thank you.
The Brady family. Well, we're just about out of time. Give me one statement about what to look forward to in November.
We were going to have high voter turnout and very high engagement, and I can't wait.
With that, I'm looking to what happens with Ed Deal's latest anti-tax measure if he keeps pursuing that now that he's no longer running for governor.
Absolutely. Boy, we could keep talking, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
So glad to have you both here.
Thank you.
Rebecca Tweed, Julia Shumway, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And another reminder, we are taping this on Thursday morning. You can find the updated results over on KGW.com. And don't forget, you can watch Straight Talk anytime on our free TV streaming app, KGW Plus. It's available right now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you back here next week.